and I welcome you on the webinar about creative education in UK. I'm a business development I'm responsible in business development in School of Innovation in Creative Thinking IKRA, and today I will be the moderator of the session. Please note that at the same time we have a live streaming on Facebook on English language, and I'm going to switch a little bit on the Russian language for the audience who don't speak English. У нас есть конференция в Zoom сейчас. Те, кто смотрит нас в Фейсбуке, будут видеть только английскую версию. И для тех, кому английская версия окажется чуть-чуть посложнее, могут перейти в конференцию Zoom, которую могут найти, ссылку на которую могут найти в комментариях Фейсбука, и присоединиться к нашей конференции, потому что у нас в Zoom есть переводчик, который будет переводить с английского на русский синхронно. So that's it. Switch back to English. Да, еще забыл сказать, чтобы перейти на русский язык, не забывайте нажимать на глобус и нажимать русский язык. So, this webinar organized by the School of Innovation and Creative Thinking IKRA, which more than 11 years helping people and businesses create innovation using different methodology of creative thinking. We teach this using the business games, strategic sessions, workshops, as well as our famous basic course in which you can participate in contests to win a discount for the spring session in 2021. If you would like to see more information on it, please go to website ikra.ru. And also the second organizer is a cultural and education section of the British Embassy in Moscow, who organized one of the biggest exhibitions of British education named Study UK, Meet UK Universities, where 39 universities present those study programs on different subjects such as in art, design, and creative industries. And the opportunity to meet, and everybody have the opportunity to meet online with universities and receive a personal consultation. For more information, you can also visit the website, which can be found on the comment section. And also our session is a part of this big exhibition. I would like, before to introduce our speaker, I would like to note that all the audience can share the questions and comments on the comment section on Facebook and the chat on the Zoom conference. All these questions we can.
So just as a catastrophe,
I just please ask to turn off the microphone. Thank you. All the questions you can transfer to the speaker. And also I would like to introduce Adam Bраун from London South Bank University. Hi, Adam. Adam is a senior lecturer in the Department of Photography at the School of Arts and Creative Industries and a member of the Center for the Study of Network Image, and also exhibition artist focusing not only on photos, but on videos, sound, computer games, and connecting to the other media. Adam teaches students to explore and analyze to find their creative path and to be focused on practice. That means Adam is a practicer. So, hi, Adam.
Hello.
Yeah, I would like just to introduce yourself and talk more about your projects and talk more about you. I know that you have something to show us.
Thank you very much, Anza, and welcome to everybody. Thank you to IKRA for the chance to speak, and I've got a short presentation which will give you some idea of both the university that I teach in, but also some of my projects and my methodology, because when I met the team yesterday, I think there was definitely an emphasis on methodology and looking at innovative ways of delivering creative education. So I'll focus a little bit on that. So I'm going to launch a presentation now, which I hope you'll all be able to see. It's on PowerPoint, so forgive me, I'll just switch over to PowerPoint, and then if you could let me know it's visible, that'd be great.
Yeah.
See that? Yeah? Okay. Just launch. Okay. So give it a second. So that's me. Okay.
Oh, Adam, please unmute your microphone. Okay, we just like translate on my mouth.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you.
Good. I'm not sure why it muted. It just did. Thank you. So this is me. I'm senior lecturer at London South Bank University since 2015. And the photography course that I teach on is situated within a School of Arts and Creative Industries, which also includes film practice, creative advertising. It's got visual effects, sound design, journalism, fashion promotion, a whole range of other courses. And also my research affiliations to an organisation called the Centre for the Study of the Networked Image, which is a group of researchers, PhD students and postdocs looking at photography after the networked image. So quite an extensive set of interests in computational photography, post-photography, algorithmic photography, but also, you know, what is the image now after the network and within the network. And we're linked to the Photographers Gallery in London and a couple of other institutions around Europe. So there's a lot of fun to be had. But the course, the BA photography course, I joined it in 2015. And it was already quite innovative. What the course team had developed was a course which looked at critical practice within the context of professional practice. Now, normally within the United Kingdom, photography courses fall into two camps. They're either very fine art based, so they're very much about, you know, using photography to achieve fine art outcomes, and the work is mainly produced for the gallery. Or they are very commercially based, in which case their graduates are aiming for career in the commercial side of the industry. Those two schools of thinking about photographic education fight constantly. They're constantly at war with each other, between the artists who are constantly at war with the commercial practice and the commercial practice which is sort of thinks that the fine art are just not proper photographers and are never going to make any money from it. Our course sits completely in the middle of those. We completely ignore that argument. It's completely old-fashioned and a relic of past systems. Fine art is an industry. The commercial world has also got the ability to bring intense critical insights, and we're after a deep, rich professional discussion. We teach our students to take part in the kind of conversations that they might find within the industry and understand how deep you can go with those conversations. We also expect the people who are concentrating on fine art practice to produce work which is ready to find an audience, and they understand the language of the audience they're seeking. To give you an example of this, in the second year, we have two big projects where students make work for professional outcomes. The first one, which we're currently working on at the moment, is an exhibition. And that exhibition is this year taking place in Peckham at the Copeland Gallery. And it's completely organized and run by the students. The image you see on screen is from a couple of years ago, and here we collaborated with a company called ARC in London, who had this amazing printer which allowed students to print on all sorts of three-dimensional materials. And this Peter Jordan's work, he was printing photographs on satellite dishes using this phenomenal piece of technology. The show also is accompanied by talks, demonstrations and events. So students also, while they're putting on an exhibition, they learn about events organization and planning. So on the one hand, they're producing work which is pushing the boundaries of what you can do with photography, but then they're taking it out and publicizing it and promoting it with some really interesting events. Now, this is second year BA work, and some of it is absolutely phenomenal for its particular stage of development. And they learn a lot, and it's painful, and they fight with each other, and then they make friends again, and then it becomes very kind of like a rebirthing process for them in the second year. Second year is always very hard in HE. It's but we help them with that transition with a good range of support structures. The other thing they do in semester 2 is they produce books, and they do self-publishing. They publish small artist books in small print runs, and they actually organize a shop and they sell things, and they also have presentations where they talk about their work to the public as well. So you can see that what we have is a very lively course, and the course is very public facing. The students aren't just making work and showing it to the tutors, they're showing it to the public. And then we mark them on on how well they have researched their work and how well they've approached their audience. So they come out after 3 years, they're already aware that they're making work for an audience and that they're professionally ready. This is the work. I'm going to showcase 2 pieces of work by the same student, and this shows the range of work that they do. Emily Carver here is a student who graduated a couple of years ago, but she did we took a team of students over to Italy to a company that makes cranes called Fassi. And the students who went out there had to produce the Fassi calendar for 2018. So these are some images from that. So Emily Carver planned this with a team. We took the lights out, they flew them over to Italy, they paid for accommodation, and the students actually had this fantastic experience of producing a professional photographic shoot. So this is Emily Carver's professional work. And then if you look at her personal work, this is a piece of work that she did for her final degree exhibition, which is a mixed media video installation dealing with issues of sexual harassment. So it's deeply personal and deeply political. So you can see here the breadth of stuff that we do. On the one hand, the work is commercial and innovative. And on the other hand, the students go deep and are able to produce work with a great amount of self-expression. And we're asking them really to key into contemporary issues and to really be as bang up to date as they possibly can. This is a fantastic contribution to the show. So, okay, lockdown happens, and the UK on the 19th of March shuts down. Everything goes into stasis, and I guess at that point in time, we had to do a lot of thinking about how we're going to adapt to this new situation, considering we have such a lively in-person and in-your-face course. Here's a few things that we did. We bought a package called Satellite, which is a studio, VR studio package. I don't know if you've come across this thing before, but one of the things that we do, of course, is to teach students the techniques of photography. And we took them into this virtual reality studio where I ain't plugging this at all. This is it's just a wonderful thing where we can simulate being in the studio. So here we are, everything goes online. We're now sort of thinking, can we use VR? Can we use simulations? How do we simulate space? Space has disappeared. The university shuts down for 4 months. There's nobody coming in or out of the building, yeah? So we still managed to kind of roll out the end of the study program using these kind of technologies. My background, I'm a fine artist. My first degree is in fine art. I did sculpture and I studied at Gwent with Roy Ascott, who's one of the pioneers of new media art. If you know his reputation, his theory includes elements of telematics, cybernetics, networked culture, and he's one of the originators of some of these theories. So I had this kind of very interesting degree experience myself, where everything was already networked. So I'm kind of prepared for this. You know, my practice is all about, you know, the duality of network and reality and the way things sit between them. And if my educational methodology, which I've been working on for quite some time, is based upon student-centered learning augmented with new technology. I guess if you really want to think about the kinds of things that I do and to put it in very simple terms. So I'm 51, so most of my teaching was not taught in a networked environment, but I did spend an awful lot of time thinking about how people work together in groups and how they communicate and relate to one another, and thinking about how you design educational experiences. And along comes the network, and suddenly it's possible to swap out people and replace them with machines. So say, for example, you take group work within an educational context, where, for example, you have 3 or 4 people working in a team. There are all manner of techniques that educators will use to get teams to work together. You know. Hello? Oh, so I thought it was a question. That's okay. So I'm just going to give a couple of examples of that. Yeah. So here we have, this is a piece of group work. I'm going to showcase this, and probably after a couple of slides, I'll let you pitch some questions at me. This is a piece of work called Auto Photosynth, and I created this a few times over the years, but basically Photosynth is a piece of photographic stitching software, and you use you can take multiple shots and they'll stitch together into a simulation of a 3D environment. What I did with this group of students is to give, I worked with one camera and 15 students. And I gave one student the camera and asked them to take a photograph of the group. And while the student was taking a photograph of the group, all the group were looking into the camera. Then the student handed the camera over to another person. That second person took a photograph of the group with all of them looking at him. And this went on until all 15 students had taken a picture. We then took those images into photosynth and composited them into a VR environment. As you navigated this VR environment, it looked as if every single person in the photographs was looking at you. But what you were actually seeing was each person's view on the other members of the group looking at them. So it simulated the composition of an individual viewpoint from 15 totally different viewpoints in the space and mapped the space. And the reason why I'm showing you this piece of work is because it shows that it's something very fundamental about the networked experience. When you look at the photograph and when you look at the group within the network, how individual subjectivities and subjective experiences are composed of multiplicities. They're composed, many views composed into one, making one subject. So we invented this subject out of the viewpoints of 15 different people, and then we put the viewer in the situation of being looked at as if they were this imaginary subject. So these are the kind of things that I'm interested in, and these are the kind of innovations that I do. I've run a few workshops at the Photographers Gallery experimenting with artificial intelligence and machine learning. This is from a workshop called Workers' Education in the Age of Intelligent Machines. And this goes back to thinking about how do we document or consider the experience of knowledge workers in the AI industry, the people who are making data sets or sorting images or creating the algorithms that make machine learning and facial recognition function. Thousands and thousands of people employed for very poor wages, endlessly sorting images into data sets to enable machine learning to actually work. I can talk a bit about this at length. But we tried to sort of set up a workshop where we thought, well, forget photography and how it used to be. This is where photography is now. Photography is made by machines. Photographs are viewed by machines. And the human in all of this is somehow lost. So how do we train people now when, say, if you think 100 years ago, what would a photographic worker have been? Well, now a photographic worker is something very, very different. It might not even be human. Other things we did, a couple of VR crits. We did some VR workshops in the university where instead of putting work on the walls, we hung work in Mozilla Hubs, which is great. If you've ever worked in Mozilla Hubs, it's a beautiful piece of technology. It's free, it's clean, it's fun. You can organize an exhibition in virtual reality space and invite students to come along and view each other's work and have a discussion. So there's a couple of shots from that. And my hint to you, if you want some takeaways from this, if you the one very practical takeaway for this particular experiment was to run two technologies in parallel. We had Mozilla Hubs in one window and we had Zoom running in the other. So if there are any technical failures, we had at least two different ways of communicating. And also some students were more familiar with Mozilla Hubs and some were more familiar with Zoom. So it was quite a bit more inclusive by running these two parallel platforms. So I would suggest, we're using off-the-shelf technology. We're using stuff which is readily available. We're not making these things happen, but the way we put them together and the way we work the group is very important to how we work. And finishing with this, on the BA photography, we do a lot of gallery trips. We encourage students to connect with their industry. So we take them out to see shows. And because we're in the middle of London, there are lots of galleries to see and there's constant work going on and work being exhibited. So we're always taking them out to see stuff. Of course, under lockdown, that was impossible. So we shifted that activity online too. And what we did was we organized a virtual gallery tour on Zoom. And I structured it exactly as I would do a physical gallery tour, except the reach was global. And we walked them through various websites and we landed on a page and we let them explore the website and then come back and give their observations. And what I found about this was the reason it was useful was because finally, after years of never ever seeing how they behaved online, apart from hearing about it on the third person, we were able to actually be with them as they navigated the web. And that meant we could be critical and analytical and thoughtful about the way the students were actually using their online research skills. Now, that is always like the dark matter of creative arts education. Online research skills are, you know, something that are very rarely taught and very rarely taught well. But by actually being in the room as they researched, we could then actually take them through this process where we enable them to speak about how they were reading these websites. Some of them were fantastically designed, but we could talk about things like the design, the layout, the semiotics, the meaning, the intention. You know, we even could attempt things like discourse analysis on some of these things. It was very, very interesting. So I'm going to leave it there. This I hope gives you a bit of background. I hope that's not too much information for you, but there's little bits of me in there, little bits of the course, and I hope it's the synthesis of me as part of a team. And just to emphasize that very much what we do on the course is teamwork. There's a lot of communication, a lot of sharing of ideas. It's a great community. Everyone's got a different take on things, but it's a good little place to be, I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. You have a great experience and very creative things that you created during the lockdown. And the first question about the inspiration, how you create this thing. How can you inspire and motivate yourself to create innovation and inspire others to do so?
It's a very difficult question to answer. I just do it. I just feel that if I don't create something new every day, a little bit of me would die. How do you explain that feeling? It's kind of like, I think that the thing is, I very much see that, you know, I think me and the students are collaborators on a project. And I say to the first years, the first day they kind of enter the building, I say, show me something that I've never seen before. And they all go, no, you've been in this business for years. You're never going to show me anything I've seen before. And undoubtedly they do. You know, I'm a very big believer in education as a collaborative journey between the lecturers and the students. And they teach me things and I teach them. So no matter what happens, it's always a process of discovery, self-discovery, but also, you know, mutual co-teaching. They will bring new insights to the table, and I will introduce them to things that they've never thought of before. And I think thinking of, you know, the ecology of the workshop, you know, as an experienced educator, you spend a lot of time making sure that students are able to speak openly. Mm-hmm. The more you teach and the longer you're in the business, the more you understand what people don't say, what they hide, and what they want to say. And it's a case of kind of making space for those things to happen. Technology always changes. I teach myself 2 new pieces of software a year. And I just look at a lot of work and I'm still a fan of it, you know.
Yeah, probably it's like you are really fan, you motivate yourself.
Yeah.
You're very interested on it. Yeah, just quick question from audience about the lockdown. Unfortunately, we have it, and pandemic. How do you think after the lockdown? Because I give you more context. The photographer right now make a lot of photo session and make the photo job on the Zoom and all the other video platform. How do you think after the lockdown it will be stay innovative? It will be stay common, like it will be a regular thing after the lockdown?
Sorry, could you explain a little bit more about what photographers working on Zoom? You mean that they're working with the visual content of Zoom, or what are they doing?
I think they work in a visual content in Zoom, and they make the like photo session on Zoom.
I think that's still emerging. I think to some extent it will adapt, but I've seen various kind of formats of this. Some of it will remain and some of it won't. I think that there are questions of access, there are questions of consent, there are questions of intellectual property, which I think are still quite grey areas. It's very different somebody going to an event and taking pictures of people who've consented to be there just by paying a ticket or walking through the door and possibly having walked past a notice that said, I give consent for my photograph to be used for publicity, and then turning up on Zoom and somebody doing screen grabs. We have to negotiate these privacy issues all the time, and some of that stuff needs to be worked out. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's still early days. It's a difficult question. I'm thinking that myself. I'm thinking in terms of what remains. The other day I was in a Zoom meeting with a research group I'm involved in, where we had Jacques Rancière in the room, who's if you don't know him, he's an incredibly influential philosopher of education. And he was doing a piece of work with the University of Rojava in northern Syria. And I'm like, well, if we have these two people in the room, this is like a historical meeting. But the only trace of it is a screenshot of some disembodied heads with terrible backgrounds. So how do we turn that into something which is visually creative, but at the same time doesn't lose that immediacy? Photography is all about the decisive moment. Photography is all about bringing something back, or tracing reality, or capturing reality. And how do you think about capturing reality when it's so disembodied? These are questions that I think of when that question comes up. I'm thinking of maybe working through some of that content myself, but I don't have any concrete answers. So there's all sorts of grey areas and difficult questions to answer before we can say what will survive.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, it's a lot of gray areas right now, and we will see in the future how it will work. I'm just jumping on the study. We have one question from audience. If I want to be a photographer, is it essential to study at college or university? And overall, what university studies gives?
That's a really good question. I mean, I tend to find that students who've been to university don't just learn how to use the technology, they learn how to network with people, they learn how to speak a particular language, they learn how to communicate. I mean, this is not to say that you can't acquire some of those skills yourself, but your client is more often than not, in the more interesting jobs, going to be incredibly well educated and sophisticated. If a client comes up to one of my students and says, I want something to look like Ridley Scott, or I want to say, make me something that has hints of Caravaggio, and they're like, well, I don't know what that is. How are they going to respond to those kind of commissions? The university experience will give you broader cultural experience, and also it will enable you to talk about it, and it will give you a massive range of research skills. So if you don't know the answer to a question, you know how to find out. So there's lots of transferable skills that come with the BA. I mean, I have had students who've come along and studied with me for a year and then dropped out and gone on to have quite successful careers in photography. And they've worked commercial jobs mostly and built their portfolios that way. So it's perfectly possible to have a very successful commercial career without going to university. But what you get from university is the network experience, the language, the research skills, the discourse that's going to build you up. I often say to my students, well, if you want the grunt jobs, if you want to do weddings and portraits for the rest of your life, don't go to university. But if you want to access those really interesting jobs that put you in interesting places and ask interesting questions and genuinely innovate, then you need to be within a group of people who are able to go where other people can't and ask difficult questions.
So yeah, you mean probably the university, it's more about the community.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's completely about the community. Yeah, and that community sharing and building its own knowledge and collaborating on the development of innovation.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I'm just jumping into another question. We have some from audience. And the question, how to work systematically if you are a creative one? And yeah, just answer to this question. I will pose you another one.
How to work systematically if you're creative?
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the final word?
The creative one.
Okay. I think it's a bit of myth that creative people are necessarily disorganized and not systematic. I mean, I have many number of my students who are, maybe that was a question that was valid about a generation ago, but young people in the United Kingdom now are no longer in the situation where they can afford to be indulgent. I think a lot of them are working in jobs. A lot of them have professional experience already. My generation, we went straight from school to university, and that was that. But the kids I teach are already they know how to fill out a risk assessment. They know how to do a work plan. They've kind of worked for money. They've planned their lives. They've had to plan their lives. It's a different world. I think occasionally you meet some people who are very disorganized, and I do walk them through project planning. One of the things that we do on the course is definitely focused on developing organizational and structural skills. For example, the gallery project, we teach project planning. Before I was talking to you guys, I was in a meeting with our second years, and we're planning the second year exhibition, and we have 4 teams, and each one of them has a project plan. Each one of them has a set of roles and a set of deadlines to meet and targets. And we use a lot of, we introduce them to those techniques, and we monitor them, and those are the training slopes, and that means that they're set up. They know how to plan a major project and how to do teamwork. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, that's great. Jump into another question about the photographer. Is network really important for a photographer, and why? And do you teach how to promote yourself as a professional?
Yes, we do. We teach you how to promote yourself as a professional. Second years are producing websites at the moment, so they're going through a website development module. They're currently learning how to promote their work on Instagram. They're running an Instagram takeover at the moment at the university's Instagram page, where they're showing their work. Then learning little bits as they go about SEO and keywords, and how to run a campaign, pitch, tone, voice. But all of these things, and you can get lost in these things. I'm always kind of fighting with social media in a way, because I want them to present themselves. I want them to go deep, and I want their work to be ambitious. And so much of the work I see distributed on social media is repetitive, shallow, boring, tedious. It's a copy of something that I've seen before, but they're very impressed with it because it's got thousands of followers. So part of my job is to go, well, these people are networking incredibly well, but their work is rubbish. I think we all know what we're talking about here. We want to see good quality work, and we want to see work that pushes the envelope. So because we have this in our assessment criteria, we have the word innovation. So we're insisting that they create new stuff, and we're insisting that they learn the research skills to create new things. So the work comes out of research, not through copying something that's already successful, because those days are gone where you can just do what somebody else is doing and make money off of it. It's not, the market is saturated. So if you're not working a niche, if you're not breaking new ground, if you're not innovating, or you're not finding a new way to do something, you're going to find it hard. The other thing I would say as well, that tempered with that, is an emphasis on usefulness. You do have to be useful to somebody in order to make a living. So that means that self-promotion is like the surface. It's got to be backed up with a solid ability at the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, and just thank you very much. Just jump in quickly to another questions. And what methods do you find relevant and effective in developing courses for specific professions?
Specific professions. That's a very broad question. And we cover a range of different photographic professions on the course. The ability to teach yourself. Again, the ability to know your professional practice community. That's common.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you're a fashion photographer, you read the right magazines, you go online, you read what the other professionals are saying. If you're an editorial photographer, you know the debates within that profession. So you're informed about the controversies. For example, last year, a couple of years ago, anybody who was doing documentary or journalistic photography was very much following all the scandals and controversies within the World Press Photo Competition. So we, as a team, we all come from very different genres and practices of photography, but we do follow the conversations that are happening out there in the world. And this is what I meant at the beginning about how the course is able to go deep into the commercial world, because it's, artists have this idea of industry that it's all incredibly organized and everybody agrees and it's very homogenous, but it's not. Photography is all about very opinionated and egotistical people fighting with each other all the time. And you've got to step into this world and to be able to speak that language and defend your work and promote it. So yeah, know your genre, learn your techniques, but it's about speaking the language and being able to understand what people are saying when they say certain things. And if you take a young student, it's very scary for them. They've just come out of school and they're an undergraduate, and they look at the world of photography and and the controversies and these arguments. It's like two elephants fighting in a room. How do you step into that? So in a certain sense, you need to, with the younger students, take them through this step by step, and they grow through the 3 years of the course to a point where they grow in confidence, that they feel that they can speak and they can answer back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Probably it's more about that you mentioned before, the university community. They can, as a professor, can teach how to communicate and what is the genre and all other terminology. And
the one thing is we have lots of guest speakers as well. So we have a lot of people coming in. We've got 14 guest speakers per year. Mm-hmm. So that means that we have many, many, many people coming in from the industry who will give an hour of their time or 2 hours of their time to talk to the students and say, this is where I started, this is where I went, this was my early work, this is my later work, this is my journey. And then the students can hear that, so they understand that everybody started out somewhere, no matter how far they went.
Okay, great. Just quick 2 questions probably, because we have not a lot of time. You
That's okay.
Before the lockdown and more about it, the audience want to know more about it and more about the initiative learning models that you discover. Can you please advise what probably you can mark more on initiatives that you discovered during the lockdown? I mean, couple of phrases are probably the new innovation think that you opened for you during the lockdown.
Well, I mentioned one of the biggest thing for me this year, I think, has been this stuff with VR and trying to work out virtual reality galleries. I think that's been a lot of fun. I think there was a lot of hype about this at the beginning of lockdown, and what we did was look at a lot of what the industry was doing and looking at galleries going online, and some of them doing it very well and some of them doing it very badly, and being able to tell which is which. It's sort of critical analysis. So when we kind of settled on this model, I was looking for a long time about how to do a gallery crit in virtual reality, and we kind of found this thing called Mozilla Hubs, which is now becoming a really interesting phenomenon. I'm following a lot of creative educators in Australia and Austria who are using this. Martina Menegon from Austria is doing wonderful work with this. There's a great program at the Photo Museum Winterthur in Austria who have been doing gallery walks hosted on Zoom. So, there is some really, really interesting stuff out there. So being connected to that community, and again, these are networks from people that I know and been in contact with for a long time. I would have called myself a new media artist at one stage. And I think that this has now kind of come into its own. Mm-hmm. So with photography is a way of making images, but then those images can sit within this kind of new media practice. It's there's so much you can learn about what you can do, and there's so many interesting things that have been tried. A lot of people think I'm quite technologically enthusiastic, but I'm actually quite skeptical of technology. I always am slightly suspicious of it and think if you kind of do something to it, it reveals itself. You know what I mean? It can be quite exclusive. It can be a block to certain people participating. So then when you try to devise a workaround for that, that can become quite useful. If it allows people to speak and it allows people to communicate, it's good. But you always have to keep an eye out for the people who it's blocking and the people who it's not allowing to speak. This was fun. It was cheap. I'll try to keep things cheap. I'll try to make sure that the technology that students could use. Students don't have a lot of money, so they can do something for free. They do it. Yeah, I don't like to be a kind of teacher who says, well, you've got to buy this $1,000 package, otherwise, what the hell are you doing? Or you have to have a £500 camera. You work with the materials to hand and you use your brain. This was great because I think looking at students looking at the internet enable us to have some really rich conversations about research skills. This is probably the least funky of the things that I did, but probably the most insightful. And then there was another project. This was something that I did at the beginning of lockdown. It was to do with trying to reproduce the photographic studio. I got very, very bored with looking at pictures of people sitting in their bedrooms on Zoom, and I just thought, what happened to lighting? What happened to photography? Where's the studio gone? There's one thing that we lost was the studio. So I had a little project where I got people to to do selfies against a piece of black fabric stuck to a window, meaning that they only had like the rim light of the portrait. So the only thing that remained was just an outline of the face, almost like if you know anything about 3-point lighting, it's called a kicker or a hair light. And they would send these things to me, and I would take them into a piece of code, which then span them around an axis to make these kind of 3-dimensional heads in a way that is kind of like a science fiction teleportation device. And I was like, well, I'm doing this for fun. It's an interesting thing to try. And it comes up with some beautiful visual results. But on the way to these results, people learn something about lighting. So this is the bait. The picture is the bait. But in the process, the students are actually teaching themselves about 3-point lighting when there is no studio. So this is the project that I kind of guess it kind of bridged my fine art practice and my educational practice, because on the journey to making the pictures, that learning about studio lighting was still happening.
Okay, great. And probably the last questions, the last one question, but will be divided in different parts. How do you think the traditional photography will remain in digital reality right now? And how important is it to make creative photo nowadays? And on the other side, does the mobile photography have a future?
Does which photography have a future?
Mobile photography.
Mobile photography.
I mean, in the cell phone.
Oh gosh, does it have a future? Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because one assumes that with all the hype about mobile technology that it would have a future because it sells itself as the future. There are many different opinions about what the future is going to be, and I was kind of interested when I spoke to your colleagues yesterday. One of them said to me that about progress. I made some comments about different parts of the world being more advanced than others, and for me this is a very kind of old-fashioned view. I think that this idea of progress is a very complex and controversial one. I think for me, I think the development is important when it encourages more people to speak to each other in more considered ways, and there's more emphasis on the social bonds that it builds, rather than whether the technology is super advanced or it does this, that, and the other. And I think that in the pace to develop technology, the way that contemporary capitalism works, is a lot of technologies hit the market and they're hyped in order to generate venture capital before they're actually ready, or before there's actually some consideration of the effects these technologies would have. I think VR, this is the classic model. If you look at Jared Lanier's analysis of the VR industry, VR comes and goes in waves, doesn't it? It kind of like it's fashionable, then it's out of fashion, then it comes back in, and then they have a problem with nausea, and everyone gets sick, and then everybody goes off, and they can't afford the technology. So VR is a classic example of a technology where, in some periods of time it looks incredibly advanced and looks like the future, and other times it looked like it's the past, because it just didn't work. It fails to take off. So we have to be very skeptical about what we think about technology. I think to be very skeptical about what is being sold to us as the future. And I'm very much aware of the fact that one thing that's characteristic about the network is that it the images that we produce are all in some way networked to market structures. and to speculative financial capitalism. That, if the big one now is AI. That AI is now the world-leading technology. If we don't engage with AI, our economies are going to collapse. And a lot of that is speculative capitalism having this, looking for the next thing to invest in. So we have to be very careful about that. There's always going to be room for creativity. There's always going to be a return to the basic interaction between people. And I think you have to be able to distinguish between these things which look funky and new, but really are saying very little and actually possibly being harmful, and things which are subtle, quiet, simple, and value the connection between people and the bonds that it can build. For me, genuine innovation is where you have something that enriches and expands human experience, not blindly rushes on towards some technological goal.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We have like a couple of questions more, but yeah, probably I just pose one question for you right now from the chat. Is there much use for VR glasses for? Sorry. Will VR glasses replace traditional excursions? I'll just rephrase it because in the chat it was.
No, they won't. Not at all. Never. People want to go places. It's fun.
During the lockdown, probably it will become.
During lockdown, I think people will play around with it. They're also quite expensive as well. Are they going to become cheap? I tried the Google Glass and it hurt me. I put it on my face and it makes my nose hurt. They're painful things to use. It's not comfortable. Of course, I tried an Oculus Rift a couple of times, and again, it's very much an acquired taste. I think if you want to engage in it, I do a lot of these things on screen within the browser. It's almost like gaming. The comparison with it is probably more with gaming than it is with an excursion. Do you want? Does the game give you a reward? And I think if the gameplay rewards you enough that you forget the discomfort, then yes, it will be taken up. But if you feel like it's still going to be a good idea to go out into the hillside and walk around, it's never going to replace that. And I think with the gallery trips, it will become a supplement. I think it will become a way of doing it. I kind of went to see some fantastic shows in London last year with Hito Stale up in just off Green Park, and you'd go into these rooms and you would see ostensibly a 3-screen video, and it was a great piece of work. But it was staged beautifully. It had beautiful chairs to sit in, and it was designed so that you felt you were in some kind of command and control center. So it didn't feel weird to go somewhere physically to see something on a screen. It was really well done. There was a beautiful exhibition with Haroon Farooqi, again in the same gallery, where the two of them had produced this amazing installation of screen-based work that looked at the lives of workers throughout the world. And as you walked around it, different vistas revealed themselves and different perspectives, which you would never have got from a virtual experience. Mm-hmm. But having said that, there's some interesting things happening within Mozilla hubs. I think that will be a big innovation. I've seen some great creative shows. Martina Menegan showed some work last week in a show called Feelings, and the space was so beautifully designed that every step you took through this space revealed new vistas that you hadn't seen before. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of saying this or that genre or this or that technology will be the future of anything. I think there's good work and there's bad work in all genres, and it will just become a palimpsest, a new layer of stuff.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, we're just running out of time. Adam, thank you for having you with us today. You have a great experience, and we hope that after lockdown you will create more and more. Thank you for having you with us. And I remind that it was this discussion organized by the School of Innovation and Creative Thinking, IKRA, and Culture and Education and Cultural section of the British Embassy in Moscow. Just remind you that in IKRA we can visit the website ikra.ru, just to be in a contest and win the discount for the basic course in spring 2021. And also I remind you that Culture and Education Department of British Embassy in Moscow organized the big exhibition, which our discussion was part of, named Study UK, Meet UK Universities, where the 39 universities presents their programs in different matters. And you can meet all the universities online and get individual advice. And more information, for more information, you can go to the comment section and click on the link button. Thank you, Adam, very much for being with us. Have a great evening, and also have a nice day and end of the week.
And thank you to everybody who asked questions. Thank you for engaging with the presentation. Thank you, Anza, and the team.